meeting. You could tell by the texture of our voices how difficult the decision was to make. The process is difficult to understand, and that's why in the meeting I said it's just not an easy or popular thing to do what we do when we sit up here. And even when we disagreed, we did it respectfully, as it should be and as it will be. So thank you. We are due to revisit our UDO and our CLRP, but realize what has happened here in the last 2 years. I was sworn in December, and in March, we were shut down due to a very unknown, not understood, frightening, how are we going to get through this disease? Thank goodness we managed well, our businesses thrived, our downtown figured it out. So honestly, we now have the privilege of revisiting, which we shall do. So that being said, I'll turn it over to our manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And it does just feel like we left halftime because we were just in this room. No, the only thing I have commentary-wise this evening, because we'll go through each of the items as we work our way down the agenda following AR review, is there will be one addition next Tuesday evening, and that, of course, will be the written decision from the item you just dealt with on Monday. Typically, protocol would be that would be at the next regular business meeting. However, particularly given the nature and in-depth discussion that took place, to ask BJ to try and turn around a written decision and then have you all review it and be happy accepting it 48 hours later was just asking too much of everyone. So BJ will have a draft written decision ready for the packet that'll go out, and then that will be back on this agenda next Tuesday evening. And I think Mr. Grieve would like to say a couple of things about that before we move on.
Yeah, just very briefly. So I took the notes, the comments, the discussion, took the salient points, and basically just put them together and tried to connect the dots between the criteria for each one. You guys did definitely give me enough discussion and enough points that I was able to put them in there. You will notice that because I'm just trying to connect the dots and get the stuff that matters for defensibility in there, it's not exactly poetry, it's technical writing. So I just want to give you a heads up that if you, with this one in particular, I could see maybe an interest in reading it to see how it came out.
Okay.
But just please know it's technical writing. It's darn good, but it ain't. But it's not poetry. So that's all.
It's not pretty. That's okay. It's like an ugly pie.
Yeah, it's not good.
Before, I guess it'll be in our packets.
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
It's like an ugly pie, but it's still good.
It's still, yeah, exactly. Still delicious.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, I will point out that item A, the proclamation, is actually a presentation that will occur next Tuesday evening. So unless you had something to say on that, Mayor, I think we can move forward to the AR review.
Are there going to be Girl Scouts there?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. So my wife said she was getting messages about it, and I didn't know anything about it. So
Don't feel bad.
is
I
it
just
just
saw
you're
this.
just okay?
Uh-huh.
Girl Scouts there, and they are asking to lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, great. I'm so excited. Is your girls coming?
Maybe they are.
I'll find out.
Well, with 3 girls, you got a chance.
Yeah,
Somebody's
maybe one
gotta
of them will be
show up.
there.
Okay. All righty. AR 0622. I see there's someone who's representing them out there.
I believe Jennifer's got a staff presentation on it also.
This is the Murphy Insurance Agency expansion. Welcome. It's been a while since we've seen you up here.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I am pleased to be here. And my name is Jennifer Hunt. I am the Planner 1 for the Town of Southern Pines. And I'll be presenting the architectural compliance permit that was submitted by Murphy Agency as well as Neil Smith Engineering, Inc., which they are also present tonight. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, if you can go back, sorry. This is drone imagery of the front of the building in case you were not sure where it's at. Next slide. It's at 250 West Pennsylvania in Southern Pines. So it's outlined in red, and it's in a central business district. This is for the addition to the existing building. So this is their site plan, and as you can see, it is pointed with the red arrow. So it's about 1,265 square feet of an addition to the already existing building. Next slide. This is an image, a rendering of what it will look like. So you can kind of see the new proposed building a little bit from the right-hand side. is what it looks like. This is just a color rendering of what they submitted, which is also in the report. This shows what is currently existing in the back, which is where they will put the addition of that building. And this is the right elevation and the left elevation. I wanted to focus on the new building. And as you can see, again, all this is in your paperwork, but for the purposes of presentation, I wanted to focus on the new building. And the rear elevation, and then again, the back of the current existing building. So in conclusion, they are compliant with all of our section 4.10.4, which is our architectural compliance that we look at. They are asking for a deviation for the exterior finish. They currently have hardy board siding on the existing building, and they'd like to match the new proposed building to match that. So it does not meet the 80% brick requirement. So they would like to use hardy board siding to match the existing building facade. And that concludes my presentation.
So they're painting the red building blue? Is that what I'm seeing?
Alabama crimson. My boss picked it out.
Smart man, I know where he went to school.
I just thought the NC State guy would want the red
I know,
building
that's the
still.
reason I said.
It's like,
His face is red though, so that makes up for it.
I go with the boss.
all right.
Don't they say Nationwide is on your side?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any concerns or questions that they're just not doing the 80% brick, but it is going to match what they already have?
Yes.
It blends in well, so. Mr. Murphy is here, the other Mr. Murphy, we got, you know.
That's right.
Oh, Mike. I'm about to say it's Paul, darling. Poor Beth.
That's right.
That's what he said. Any questions?
So there are no changes to the front of the building, correct?
No, there's no changes to the front, except they're going to be.
Color.
Yes, coloring the existing hardy building.
That's nice.
Is this just us, or is this one that has to go through the things that are in that downtown overlay where there's is it a historic district? Okay. Okay. This must be closed then.
It's close, but it is not.
All right.
Any questions for Jennifer? You got off easy.
I sure did. Thank you so much.
Should we ask really tough questions of Mr. Murphy just to keep the spirit going?
Yeah, what band's going to be it?
He's the same painter. That's the cleanest paint job I've ever seen.
So the next thing is a review public hearing applications.
This one where do they need to come back or
I was going to say, just to clarify for the record, do the applicants need to be present next Tuesday evening when you vote on this?
Unless they want to, but no.
It's fun. Come join us.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Unless you have any Girl Scouts and they're part of the presentation.
Yeah, we know. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. The review of public hearing applications for upcoming business is the 3900 Youngs Road, requesting a voluntary annexation.
Simply, we scheduled that last month. The application's been checked out. Everything checks off. We'll have a public hearing next Tuesday evening. I am not aware of any objections or anything we should hear relative to that, so it should be a very simple open, close, and hopefully adopt the order of annexation.
Okay. The next one is the Ace Hardware expansion.
I'll let BJ handle this one.
Yeah, so this is a plan development application for a CDP for the subject property circled in red on the screen in front of you. You can see the location of current Ace Hardware. You can see the location of the multi-tenant commercial right here. And this subject parcel used to be owned by the Fry family. The current owner of Ace Hardware, Saunders, has purchased this subject property. They would like to build a larger Ace Hardware here. And then their plan calls for this right here would be we changed our angle there. We're looking to the north here, and now we're looking above with north being off to the left. They're going to put the Ace Hardware right here, and the parking right here, and then they have two subsequent phases here of out parcels. Staff has asked that they orient the structures such that the parking fronts on Capitol instead of fronting on Airport. They've complied with that. They've changed the CDP to reflect that. Everything was going along swimmingly until what happened was at the public hearing in front of the planning board, the Moore County, Scotty Malta with Moore County Airport was there. He listened to the presentation. He had submitted some written comments about some concerns about the general location of it, but he was not aware that these two out parcels here were going to be developed in the manner they were. And so we looked at it, and during the presentation, if you see this line right here, this is basically the direct approach for the airport, and it runs right down the middle of those two out parcels. And so he really expressed some concerns about that based on his perspective from the issue of what he cites as well-known national crash data that are used at airports to determine safe and unsafe areas. He is going to submit an additional comment, agency comment, that I'll distribute at the meeting most likely, as well, and he will have some of that data. He is having to take the position. He has met with the applicants since the planning board meeting. I think they either met today or yesterday. But I got off the phone with him before this meeting, and he was basically saying, I'm really sorry. I understand the nature of what I'm about to say, but I can't go along with this proposal because you're putting two out parcels in arguably one of the most dangerous places for an airport of our size when it comes to.
How many feet are we talking? I mean, is it just, you're talking
Well, the
10
building-
feet, you're talking 20 feet, you're talking significant? You're
The
talking.
building height restriction here is 40 feet. It's not so much the building height restriction.
No, I'm
as
just
it is-
talking about the line that you're talking about when it's cutting through. If it's coming through,
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up a.
you're talking about it,
single
it
map
just
here.
is a little bit, or is it like,
So-
yeah, you're going right over the,
Yeah, see this line right here?
uh-huh.
It just kind of goes straight and it just
Oh,
cuts
it
right
cuts
through
it,
there.
it divides it.
And it's not very far away, so the aircraft coming in here, before I flew the drone up there, I called him to get with the CSA and put out a notice that there was a drone in the vicinity. And I'm telling you, the drone imagery I got, I won't waste time pulling it up, but it's pretty close. It's, you're very close to that runway. Now that said, we don't have a regulatory mechanism. We have an airport hazard overlay, and it has two different restriction areas. This is outside of the most restrictive area, but it is also a legislative hearing for a request for a rezoning to approve a CDP. So there's a lot of discretion that can be applied by the town council with regard to safety issues that are brought up. This is a really unfortunate, tricky situation. The applicants have worked very closely with staff and met with the airport and told them their plans. But this is one where I can understand why Scotty Malta, as representing the airport, is having to take the position due to the risk and due to future incidents. He wants to be on the record saying, please don't put these land uses. He has no problem, by the way, with the Ace Hardware.
That
So
was
if you
my
go-
question.
Yeah, if you go to this part back here and putting an Ace Hardware here, that's not a concern for him. It's the two out parcels right here that can be developed.
Would that kill his thought on doing this project?
That's something that I think that he and I'll certainly get in touch with the applicants and just find out, hey,
Because
what
that
does this
certainly alters his whole plan.
substantially, and it has a lot of effect on him, and I think he's going to have to figure out where this leaves him.
Okay,
The town council is, at the public hearing, is based on the testimony, is just going to have to make a decision based on the criteria for rezoning, whether or not this is, because rezoning, in a nutshell, I'm not going to quote the exact criteria, but is this a good place to zone for these particular uses?
right.
And that question just got more challenging to answer based on that meeting he had with the airport authority. I wanted to give you a heads up on that. A
Okay.
couple things. When we get that revised comment, we could probably forward that out in an email to you guys so you have it ahead of
Yeah,
time.
that'd be
Is that
good.
appropriate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know you had said that there was some discussion about restaurants and things, which would be an obvious concern for Mr. Malta. Was he did he state he was pretty much of the opinion of no structures there whatsoever, or was it more sort of the intensity of the use that might take place?
That's a great question. I literally got off the phone with him because I had to hustle and get over here.
Okay.
And so I told him, we scheduled a meeting for either after 3:30 tomorrow or on Friday. That's a great question I'd like to follow up with him on, and I'd like to think that that would have come to my mind anyways, but the fact that you brought it up, I'll put it on my list of like, hey, good point. Is there anything else? Like, if for some reason it was a different land use such as offices?
Well, and I bring that up because, I mean, the airport has a history, and certainly many airports do, of actually taking down land that they don't want developed in any way, shape, or form. But oftentimes it's a function of sort of the intensity of the use of that land, where they may not be interested in taking it all the way down, because in that case, basically they're saying it's an undevelopable tract. But clearly a restaurant, I totally understand his position relative to that.
And I'm assuming that he had no idea when he bought it that this may not be what he had hoped to do with it.
Yeah, that remains to be seen. I think Reagan's got a good point about, you certainly don't want to come in there and say you can't do anything there. I think that the fact that the parcel could be developed with the Ace hardware without a concern means it has a developable use, but it's just the out parcels of concern. I've got two things jotted down here.
Okay.
Number one, like, did they discuss purchasing that land where the out parcels are located? And then number two is whether or not there's any other uses that would be acceptable in that area that would be a lower safety concern.
Yeah, if you can get that to us before, that would be good.
You're talking about intensities of use. I'm like, why? What? I was thinking, though, does he want like a 20-foot building instead of 40? But there's trees there that are way taller than that. So it's not the height, it's just
It's just that you're close enough to the runway that.
if something happened, they don't want people.
Understand it is gonna show that if, in the instance a plane comes down, it's far more likely to be in that area.
Okay.
Versus other sections of that flight path. It's not so much the height of.
Gotcha, makes sense. Yeah.
It's just a high-risk
It's just
area
whether
for
there's a lot of
planes to
people
fly
there or
out of the
not.
sky, fall out of the sky.
Oh, yeah, if you had a,
The parcel with the roast office, I think that's what that is. How is that not an issue? I feel like that's in a direct line with the runway as well.
Yeah, it very well may be, and I know Reagan has said that this issue came up when Tyler's Ridge was being reviewed the first time around. That line, I sketched it out when I was at the meeting because I had a different image. It basically slices right through about where my cursor is
That's
going.
actually, I think, just off the corner of it based upon the other.
Like, there's one in our packet that's pretty close.
Yeah,
That's the one.
yeah, so it's right here. And, I mean, it's very possible that it just, I don't know.
it's unfortunate.
I'm just afraid that the developer may have an issue with the fact that the roast office or that building went in, like that they can't be
being a
stopped. Yeah.
concern.
And my understanding of planes crashing is not that they crash directly on the line, but they could crash 50 feet to the left or right.
That came up at the meeting with the issue of, for those two out parcels, would it matter if the parking lot was located on one side or the other? And he's like, in that line? No, because if it falls out of the sky, it's gonna tumble a little left and a little right.
It's not gonna color within the lines,
Yeah,
right?
It's just but it's a tricky one, because again, if you're the landowner and you bought that land, you would like to have known that ahead of time, and there's no.
But you're right, it's interesting that.
And again, when you look at the history, well, I mean, go beyond the roast and bring yourself back down to the community college property. I mean,
How
there
did
are
that-
buildings and structures and things. And I think the key is what BJ said earlier. There isn't technically a hook to say one can't develop there.
Yeah.
The opportunity here, I'll use the word opportunity. I don't mean it quite that way, but the situation here is you've got a legislative hearing and it is something you can take into consideration. It is highly likely that someone may make the point that there are already a lot of structures there also. Yeah.
Okay,
So the issue is pretty much to make sure that those occupying the land use below will be safe. Not so much the issue of buildings being too high.
No, yeah, it's not a building height issue as I understand it. And it's entirely possible if there's already this conversation coming up. BJ had referenced that the applicant has been very forthright and made a lot of effort to bring a lot of different things into compliance. I know they've worked very hard with the community college and the representatives from the garden in creating some additional buffering and things there. And I'd like to think that maybe they can get something worked out with the airport, but maybe that's not even a possibility. But they've certainly made some adjustments from some of the original conceptual plans and things that we had seen.
how did the roast do it. That's interesting. I mean. 'cause
Well,
it
again,
seems-
there isn't anything that says you can't do it.
Right, but was that brought up when that happened? Or was Scotty there at that time?
Scotty was, no, that was a completely
Scotty was a
different crowd
different-
at that time.
that's what I'm
And
thinking.
the
It was a
airport
different-
took very little, the airport authority, as I recall it, and forgive me, it's been a number of years ago, but they took, I do not recall the authority itself taking an official position on that rezoning application. There were individual pilots who came out very vehemently against it.
Okay. I was about to say.
And in fact, a lot of the conversation, along the lines of what I was just asking BJ, a lot of the conversation at the time, if you go back and look at the zoning at Tyler's Ridge, it is not wide open general business. There are certain activities that are not actually authorized on that site, and a lot of that was around these types of conversations. It's close to the airport, so, large assembly types of things, let's not allow those
So that
there.
house is
So,
going to be gone, right?
yes.
Is that one of the?
Yes, that's.
I remember the Fries were here about every week, different Fries saying
Yeah, I
that's fine,
believe, I
that's fine, that's fine.
believe that was Mrs. Fry's place, because I know that Floyd, who stayed on the property for a very long time,
Right.
he sold his property to Jim O'Malley a number of years ago,
Number of
and he
years
had the
ago.
place that was up closest to the traffic circle that oftentimes is selling things out of the back of a pickup truck or
Right.
something, so.
Yeah, if you can get answers to those questions, that'd be
Yeah, I
great.
could- we'll try to resolve everything we can prior
Okay.
to the meeting, get something worked out, and, but just wanted to put that on your radar, and we'll be in touch on it.
Okay.
It's kind of- Imagine that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm also aware that the applicant, Mr. Saunders, will not be in town and
Right.
probably will not be at the meeting next week. He had called about that a few weeks back, and it's because he's at a convention in person for the first time in 2 years and meeting with the people internal to ACE that he also has to clear this project through. So it was just a conflict.
He nonetheless wants us to go forward with making a
Yeah,
decision
well, and
about
he's
the
got, I
property?
believe Mr. Kuntz will be there
Okay.
representing him. He's
Okay.
got people there representing him. It's just he personally won't be present.
Okay.
Okay, are we good with that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Not really. Uh-huh.
That's what I would do if I were Mr. Something out that hasn't worked out. Right.
Okay, now we've got the Blue Farm lots. We did annex those, so now they're moving forward on those 4 lot, or how is it, 4 lots? Yeah,
Probably.
5. Oh, yeah, that's when they thought I was taking over Whispering Pines, because it's now in Southern Pines. Anybody have any questions about that? Anybody doing a spiel on that one? It is what it is.
Report to open the hearing next week, but I
Yeah.
think we all understand what's
Yeah.
occurring with that one.
Right. That's what I didn't know if anybody was going to do it tonight. The next is reviewed proposal action items. This is what we talked about before, is changing our municipal election structure. I think we all dealt with that one pretty soundly, so we can just, is this going to be something written that we need to approve, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, my understanding is that'll simply be an adoption of a resolution that
Got it.
begins the process. But Jessica, if you had anything additional?
Okay. And then the house on Hale Street, that seems like a no-brainer.
I've got with us Chief Building Inspector John Bullock and our Code Enforcement Officer Lisa Webb, who have both worked on this particular file and are here to present it and answer any questions.
I guess my first question, were you able to get in touch with the,
We did. We finally got in touch with them.
I know it was
on our-
difficult.
Right, on our December one. Everything else either was lost or came back.
right, but you did find them.
We did. We did finally get one to them.
Very good. That was my
Yes, we
Cons-
finally got an answer.
concern, because we had that explanation at Triangle J when someone in Aberdeen came back to a home that was no longer there.
Well, we also posted it on the building itself as well. so
Right.
We did everything we could.
Oh, I know. I'm just glad you gave me the answer I wanted. Yes, you've gotten in touch with them. That's good.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions?
Do y'all have any questions? We've got lots of pictures.
Lots of pictures. Thank you.
So the one in December that came back that said left with individual was left with?
Yes.
Is that like their, Mr. Simpson, Mr. Strickland, Mr. Simpson? That's who received it, we think?
Honestly, I didn't look to see who signed it, but it was
Okay.
left at the home with somebody.
Okay.
And they're fine with the fact that,
Yeah, I've gone after them several times just to clean
know.
up their property, and
right.
I never hear from them.
Yeah, we try. I mean,
Yeah, I think you've done all you can do. Dotted i's and crossed t's. Good job.
Yep.
Thank you. So when will that take place? Do we have a,
Well, we're waiting for you to approve it, and then we'll tell them that they can go ahead.
okay,
And then we'll have several more coming up. We've had an onslaught, so FYI.
thanks.
Spending your money.
Well, I think some things need to be done, that's a good thing. All right, the next thing is on the consent agenda, the soccer club. Now we're getting a formal agreement. Does anyone have any questions about that one?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I gotta find my notes now.
Wait, did you talk about
Well-
the city? Did you talk about the storage abandonment?
Yeah, we missed Hillcrest.
Oh, I'm sorry, I turned the page. Sorry, back up. Hang on, Taylor.
It's fine.
It's the Hillcrest Road, the longleaf storage units, sorry. Abandoning a square foot section of Hillcrest Road.
I think BJ's pulling that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll try to get a visual here quick. Oh, gosh, hold on a second.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is a request to abandon a small chunk of right-of-way, which is essentially at the back of Pinnacle Storage Project. This is indication. I'd like to pull up there's a better oriented version. This is where you've seen over there, they've done a lot of grading work.
mm-hmm,
This is a little tiny piece of right-of-way, back of there, they would like to have abandoned. To the best of my knowledge, this does not serve any purpose for the town. The town engineer has a problem with the abandonment. And this is a request to set a public hearing for right-of-way abandonment
Okay.
pursuant to the procedures in the state statute. This is actually how that came to be. This little tiny piece of Hillcrest Road right here, which is unopened and unmaintained, that's that little triangle right there.
did that just slip through the cracks at some point?
Well, I mean, if you look at
Or just there.
the map of the property right now, I mean, the highway came through here and took, basically, if you look at this little triangle where I was pointing, you look up here,
When you go back to this is all the highway.
so it came through and just
Slice that through.
nothing really to do with that.
Right, okay.
I guess it may be in the presentation. Is there some material purpose where they need that, or are they just doing it to sort of clean it up?
I don't know a lot about this one, why it came in, other than it showed up and we processed it and we
Yeah.
took it to, put it in front of the different entities of the town and if they had an issue with it. But in terms of a motivation of why they're requesting it, I don't think they addressed that in their application, it just showed up. I don't know, Reagan, do you know more context on that?
I really don't. I was going to ask if you've run into anything while reviewing the draft site plans where they need that for some setback purpose or something, but clearly it's not a right-of-way we're ever going to open for anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And nobody owns the land beyond that right of way between that and US 1. It's not like it's on anyone else's property. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the downside of us relinquishing right-of-way? Somebody help me with,
In this instance, there,
in any instance.
well, every instance is gonna be slightly unique.
That's,
If it's right.
Way that you could envision a future road on that might open up lands to multiple lots as opposed to one large parcel. I mean, there are instances where you could look at it and say, yeah, we really probably want to maintain that because who knows in 10 years whether we would have a use for it or not. One like this, clearly, if you connect that based upon the old plat that BJ had up there, at best you're going to connect into Highway 1, which you're not going to do from back there. So, but yeah, we don't do that many of these, but every one of them is a unique situation. Some carry some potential opportunity costs with them. This doesn't appear to be one of those.
Okay.
Building on it.
And in giving up our right-of-way, we receive nothing for doing that, right?
No. Well, other than it becomes taxable land then, that it becomes part of their lot and they'd be paying taxes on it moving forward. But there's no
But they don't
compensation on the
pay, they don't
front
pay
end.
for that land.
No, no.
This is the approved site plan right now, and this is the subject area right back here. They
And
actually, see this even
we
tinier
own
triangle right here?
When there's a right-of-way,
They actually
we
own
own
that.
it.
So
And we
they
just
own,
forfeit
They
it
own
to
what?
somebody
so
wants
if you
to
look here,
give
let
a
me try
right.
to zoom in a little bit.
Times.
Okay, y'all need to look at this, hang on.
Your microphone's not picking up.
So they own a piece of it.
I just don't think you're close enough.
So, right, so we own it, they want it, we give up our right-of-way, they take the land free and clear. Is that, I've really simplified there. Why do they not pay us something for the land? Just, again, a rookie question. What's in it for us?
It's not, I don't know the answer to this, but whether or not the town actually owns that property.
It's in question.
Whether it's really a right of way.
Right, okay.
Oh, it's a,
So we own the right-of-way right now,
We have the right of way there.
right?
So it's,
Is a,
it's there so that if someone on this side, like if they're building and then that little triangle they own,
Right.
if those two are neighbors, then that has to stay open so that people can get to
Right,
and from. But
back
if
and forth.
no one can go through there, the town doesn't own it, and they own this triangle, they own this.
Right.
It's kind of like,
Taylor's earlier question was actually very pertinent. If this, for instance, BJ, can you kind of throw that grid back up? Or, well, if this, for instance, were, just give me a map to work with.
When he does, that hurts.
Yeah, so if this, for instance, just for pretend, let's say this, we were talking about instead Shaw, where you see Shaw runs from Bennett State Highway 50 up to Hillcrest Road. If we were abandoning that strip, then the properties on either side of that strip would be able to come in and claim to the center line. You'd have property owners on both sides. The town is relinquishing its right to ever extend a road through Shaw, and they would have access to in a 50-50 sort of way. Now, in this instance, there isn't a landowner other than the state on the other side of this triangle that they're asking for. So it's just a pretty much a straight up trade, because as BJ pointed out, all of those lots that are shown on this old Pine Dean map are now part of Highway 1 and its right of way.
this is the first one I remember seeing where I can't see a reason. Like usually, yeah, they need it for
I
some
know.
sort of
That's
building
what's-
or setback or access, but this one seems to have no.
So what's the,
Purpose of it.
what is their dog in the fight?
Conversation with Mr. Huntley or anyone else on this particular one, and it doesn't sound like BJ has either. The application came in, and it wasn't an application that raised any red flags with staff relative to.
Right. Looking, well,
I mean, just to be clear, I don't think this thing's working. It's on, and I'm talking into it. and-
Maybe if I put it right here.
oh.
Swallow it.
I have the other one there too.
Yeah, maybe.
I think if I get real close like that. All right, there we go. Thank you.
One, usually when we get these, if I look at it, and this would be something I would ask around, ask Reagan, you know anything about this? Because the applicants did not have anything in the packet. Now, again, no problem reaching out to them and asking them to come next week and say, hey, they had some questions about this. If you want this to be on the agenda, maybe you should be there to answer their questions.
Because the question is why?
Well, and again, all we're asking next week is to set the necessary hearing before doing it. So those are all questions they should have answers for when it comes time for the hearing.
Okay.
But it'd be good to kind of know in advance what the thought process
What's
is.
the dog in the fight, right?
Okay.
Happy to reach out to them and just ask them to attend one of the meetings.
or something they couldn't put a fence up, that's right away.
Maybe, but I'm also,
Now we go to the soccer. Question, Taylor.
Did, yeah. Hold on, let me get to it. Okay, I think my only issue was on the contract, section 9A. If the director does not reply within 30 days, and like provide a response. This is if they want to build something on the soccer field and they make a request to the director of, the Parks and Rec director, and then the Parks and Rec director does not reply within 30 days, that's considered the request is granted. And that makes me nervous. What if we have a changeover of Parks and Rec director and then we just don't get a response in 30 days and then they put a shed
Yeah,
or whatever building? I almost feel like it would be better if no response means denied. I mean, does that seem weird to anybody else?
Yeah, because generally if you don't respond, it's a no, isn't it?
That's what I would think.
This was, yeah, no, and I understand for sure your concern, and I'd like to maybe ask Doug his comment, because we put this exact language in the agreement with the Sand Sharks, and I know that was a suggestion that Doug had when we put that in there, so I'd love to know what your feelings are on that.
I can't remember. But the point, anytime you do something like that, the point is just to force a decision, so it doesn't just linger forever. The alternative would be to have what is essentially a pocket veto. You just don't do anything. That means you're not going to do it.
So I'd be comfortable with either changing it from 30 days to a larger number or just saying that with no response, it's denied, just to put us in a protected situation.
No response.
Yeah, because no response is a yes currently, right?
Right, yeah. It's on page
Change
176.
it to no response is denied. I agree with that.
Yeah. Does that work for you all?
Yeah, we'll go ahead. The Sand Hills have already signed this, but we'll get a revised agreement to them that reflects that language.
Okay. All right. Now we're at the approve the minutes to 3 meetings.
Skip the Talamar.
Keep skipping stuff, don't I?
Right here.
I've been here too long. Okay, well, I'm writing all these notes underneath the Talamore instead of where it's supposed to be. So sorry, that's my, yeah. It's that crazy eye thing going on. Yeah. I can blame it on that they can't see out of one eye. Okay, existing agreement with Talamore Golf Course, and that's for pumping from the reservoir park under certain conditions to irrigate the golf course. Is there a renewal agreement with the owners that you all have written up?
Yes. The version that's in there, they have
Okay.
signed, so they've
So-
agreed to this.
Okay. Now, the minutes to the 3 January meetings. Anyone notice any changes or additions or anything that they were not comfortable with? Seeing no response, okay. Approve utility construction agreement with NCDOT. Because we do have a municipal agreement with NCDOT in the town of Aberdeen, so.
Yeah, you'll
take that
recall
one.
when we adopted the three-way agreement, I said we would see a formal agreement come
Right.
back from just DOT relative to letting those bids and our percentage of responsibility.
Aberdeen's.
Yes, it is,
Considerably.
by state law.
By state law, don't you love it? I was telling Robbie I'd like to move a couple thousand people to his town just to have him pay too. Approve the updated investment policy, which is, anyone have any questions about that one?
Changes. I feel like I was going through it with a fine tooth comb looking for changes. It looks cleaner.
There's a lot of cleanup.
Yeah.
That's really, it's not so much that we're changing our investments or anything per se. It's just, it was cleaning up the document, which obviously has some age on it.
Yeah.
Cleaner is better. And then we have receiving bids for the street resurfacings, which I think we talked about.
Yeah, again, you've received the bids. This is simply the budget amendment we talked about so that we could knock out that section of Knoll Road in addition to our annual paving program.
Yeah.
The only other question I have, and I know it was discussed on Monday, and please forgive me, I just don't recall if a final determination was made on it, but where would you like the obligatory public comment period located for
We
next
talked about
Tuesday evening?
Doing it, I guess, warning That's not
I think just
Maybe doing it at
Giving-
the end next week, but letting
next week,
people
but
know
letting
that.
people know that the next month it will be starting. And so at 6, if they have something to say, they need to
Okay.
be there at 5:59 because we do start on time. And if they're going to be first, then they need to, after the pledge, they need to
Be ready to roll.
be ready to go. Yeah,
And limited to 3 minutes?
3 minutes. Yes.
I think that's important to also give notice
Yeah,
if that's the
so-
circumstance.
Next month, we can make a note on the agenda itself that
Right.
comments should be kept to 3 minutes and.
Great.
I think that's what we talked about that. Yeah. So we good? Anything else?
I still have right-of-way questions, but that's okay. I think, so I'm trying to think about 30 years out. If there's a right-of-way that is that close to US 1, and if we are looking for places to charge electric cars, is that going to be the kind of small piece of land that we're going to regret having given up the right-of-way? I'm way outside the box here. Go with me for a second. But those pieces that are really close to the highways, if we actually do proceed with what we heard last night at the State of the
About
Union.
like a condemnation later if they like added a fifth lane and they like moved it over. That one's so small, but would that be something that maybe?
Well, and
we could
again,
go-
remember that what you're looking at is the existing right-of-way for US 1, don't think of that as where the highway is now. Actually, US 1's got quite a bit of right-of-way, and that's why there's service roads and things
Right,
along parts
right.
of it.
I'm just trying to think.
Along your lines, at least relative, and I invite James to chime in and certainly correct me at any point, relative to structures
Right.
like an electric charging station, just for example. Those are typically not the types of things you would allow in a right-of-way in the first place. What I'm not clear about is that, let's just pretend for a moment, we did want to take a current right-of-way and line up, I don't know, 4 charging stations.
Right.
I'm not clear that we have the right to do that with a right-of-way. I've always
think
viewed the
that's good,
right-of-ways
yeah.
as things you could open roads in, run utilities through.
That not be a utility? I don't know. I think the world is changing, and I think that it would be good if we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot. But, James, you have.
Thoughts, James?
I don't have an answer to that, whether or not it's considered a utility or, I mean, if it was something the town itself owned and allowed in the right of way, I don't know if that would be an issue. Not much different than, putting a sign up, I guess.
Okay.
But now, if a private entity wanted to do it, I think
That's
that's
different.
obviously a different question. But I think with this one in particular, in similar situations, the bigger question may be, is that even our right of way to truly abandon? And that's
And that's the case with a lot of these. These plats date back
Right.
a
And if we
century.
don't know if it's
and-
our right of way, then we have trouble giving it away. But I'm also interested in who owns the land. I mean, that's just a fascinating issue that I hope there's an answer to.
so that the tiny corner that's remaining of what property was under US 1 that they
Right.
own,
Right, correct.
whoever could have built a house there isn't going to get in an argument with the person who builds a house on the existing, on the right
Right.
side.
Correct.
So that they can both get their trash cans in or their cars in or their bikes in.
Right.
And my understanding is if it's a right of way, if they put up a fence and 15 years go by and we were like, oh, it's a right of way, we want it, it's actually considered abandoned anyway because
It
it's
kind
been
of sounds
blocked for
like
so
a
long.
recent local issue, doesn't it?
It does. It feels like my backyard. Yeah.
Right, and then it becomes adverse possession, they could argue. I mean, I understand all that, and so I'm
Yeah, you're
not.
correct. It's hard to give away something you're not so sure you
Right,
have. But again, these
so-
aren't deeded, and that was my point relative to.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, again, let's figure out, I don't know. It doesn't feel right to give away a right-of-way to a land we don't own or a right-of-way we don't own. So first, it would be really good to answer that question. Secondly, why do they want it? And third, is it something that in the foreseeable future, the fluidity of what the culture is doing that may serve us well, if that's something we can do? I don't know. And James, I appreciate your input, but I'd really like to have a long-term view on that. I'd like to be looking at that way in the future. Is that something that my grandchildren, should they ever happen, would hate me for? I mean, where does Doug Gill have to go to plug in his car? There's only one place in town, right? And only 2 spaces, right?
I think there's a few places in town now.
Is it happening now? Where do you go to plug in your electric
Even-
car, Doug?
Even if it's a right of way, we can't put
Library,
something
right.
there.
So the library is
We're
only
not
2
allowed to put
spaces,
something there
right?
either.
Library has 3.
3 spaces. Okay,
Used to plug in and then walk to the McFarland.
right. And leave the car there all day. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think this is an issue that we probably need to wrap our heads around, because I think that we're headed for many more people other than Doug owning an electric car. And if that's going to be something where we could serve that purpose, that'd be awesome. It's right off of US 1. And they could go to the storage locker and hang out. I don't know.
And it is pretty much guaranteed that if we were to give them the right-of-way, that they would pay taxes on the land?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would benefit.
Well, I mean, assuming we abandon it and they claim it, yes.
But they're asking for it, right?
Right,
That's what I'm saying.
right.
I mean, for
why?
us to abandon it and them not claim it wouldn't
They'd claim
make
it
a
and
lot
then
of
we
sense.
would.
Yeah.
We'd get the taxes for it. I just don't, yeah, who knows?
And if we're
My first question is why? Why?
to, then why aren't they buying it if that's something they want? If there's a why that they answer that is
But
going to
there's no
somehow
deed.
benefit them,
How are they gonna,
that's going to be exciting. Yeah, I want to know who owns the land. So anyway, lots of questions. Sorry, just thought I'd throw
I don't know.
a wrinkle in there.
I wonder if there's a chance that that land is going to be contributing to their, that land is contributing to their planting requirements.
I bet you're not picking up. I bet your voice is not picking up.
Oh, I turned it off.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Because it was just like thoughts. I was thinking out
Oh, I have.
Well, with that being said, we.
Okay, well, BJ's going to ask the why, which I think is the most
Gonna
important
ask
thing.
the why.
And maybe somebody's going to tell us who owns the land and the right, do we actually own the right of way?
I think that asking the petitioner to be at the meeting is an outstanding
Yeah.
idea.
I think I would be more comfortable with that. That'd be great.
We'll get him to come and we'll ask the why.
Throw monkey wrench into anything.
Oh,
but
please do.
do it.
Didn't we deal with this something similar over by the Spartan Blades maybe 2 years ago? Where both the town and DOT filed basically a quitclaim deed for some property that basically everybody kind of looked at and said, nobody knows.
Did we do that around that sinkhole and all of the work we had to do?
It had to do with a sinkhole, but not the big sinkhole. There's a little sinkhole that sits closer to the service road that nobody wants to lay claim to, but there was a portion of a piece of property that DOT didn't want, town didn't have it,
Strange when the highway went.
and the property owner wanted it for his parking lot, and everybody filed quitclaim deeds against it. So that might be another similar type situation here.
Okay.
But if it's ours and it's perfectly usable land, again, let's think before we leave. I mean, if that can serve some purpose, or if that can be ultimately some income for the town, then
It
that's
would be
another
if
issue.
if it's
Yeah.
abandoned, it'll be
If it-
taxes.
Right, if there's taxes.
If they, and they must want it. I just think it's the why, and then we'll go from the
Okay, great, I agree with that.
Y'all-
I
y'all
totally
gotta-
agree with you, thank you.
digging around. Okay? We good? Anything else? I need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Well, I second.
Have a good evening.
Oh, you were saying, I thought you said someone making.
No.
And again,
I think we're all in favor. Thank you.
And to your point,
Yes.
everybody was making fun of me the other day when I told them within the next probably 10 to 20 years, every vehicle the town owns will be electric,
Right.
including heavy equipment.
Well, and